e4 is on the board. Timur plays e5, knight comes out to f3 and knight to c6. Bishop d5 played. This is the Ruy Lopez. a6, bishop comes back to a4 and now d6. This is slightly less popular than knight f6 move, but Magnus doesn't flinch. He castles and now plays his pawn to c3 in order to play d4, and we have g5 on the board. This is a Timur Gareyev speciality. He also played it later in this tournament against some players. He's using his kingside pawns to gain space and push back Carlsen's pieces, but in return, he is neglecting his development and creating weak spots. But he's well prepared. He goes bishop h6. Now Magnus brings his queen up to e2, defending the bishop. And Timur brings his queen. You can see the pressure on the d4 point is rising. Magnus now takes the pawn. He says that black, your king is in the center and I'm going to open up the center. Well, Timur Gareyev can now long castle. The knight is coming to c5, which is a juicy square. He plays knight e7 and actually Magnus can now jump in with his knight. But he first goes knight d2. Calm move. That's okay. Finishing his development, he goes knight to g6 and the knight is angling to come on the f4 square. Magnus now plays his knight to c5. Timur brings his bishop back. Not a happy move to make. You could have long castled here, but he preferred to bring his bishop back. Rook comes to d1, centralizing, and the knight jumps in. Can Magnus pick up that knight? Yes, he does. He takes it. You can't take with the pawn because of e5 and knight e4, so he takes with the bishop now. But this means that Magnus's position has stabilized a bit. He brings his knight back, putting pressure on the bishop here on f4. Timur Gareyev decides to play it safe. He short castles, but the king on g8 is exposed. Now look at what Magnus does. He first pushes the bishop back. The bishop has to move. It goes back to h6, and now what do? f4. What a move, opening up this rook. G takes f3 is a mistake because after knight takes, you can see the rook has opened up. f5 square is weak. Knight is coming to h4. This is all getting very dangerous. Timur continues with bishop g4, pinning the knight. Magnus moves his queen away to the side. And now queen e6 played, but the bishop comes back and the pressure on f7 point now mounts with the rook bishop over there. Queen goes to e7, and what is Magnus doing? He pushes the bishop back first. He wanted to move the knight, it couldn't because the rook was hanging. And now once the bishop is moved, knight h4, looking at the f5 square. So methodically, Magnus has started to take advantage of the pawn pushes that were made in the opening. You can see how magnuscarlsen punishes Timur Gareyev for things which he did 10-15 moves ago. Now queen g5 played. Knight jumps into f5. A powerful knight. Bishop goes back to b6. And white now plays his pawn to h4. Asking the queen to leave from here. You can't go to g4. There is knight h6 check, which is a fork. And so he plays queen to f6. Queen goes to e2 now, hitting the pawn on h5. Queen h8 played, defending the pawn. And now g4. Magnus is simply opening up things here. If pawn takes, queen will take it, then a check, and the rook would join in. So he plays queen h7. And how is Magnus going to finish it? He goes g5. You can literally sense Magnus knows this is winning for him, but he just needs to finish it off. He plays knight h6, blocking the queen from defending this pawn, now attacking here. And Timur Gareyev is going low on time. He has only 4, 3, 2. He makes bishop takes b3 move. Magnus can actually, well, he thinks for a bit, but then takes back the bishop. That's the most natural move. f6 played. And now he takes the pawn. So the queen moves in. Now you have the knight and the queen. Bishop comes into e3. Many ways to win. The most natural one is to attack the bishop with rook f3. He goes rook d e1, which is also a very strong move. Gareyev takes here. Whoa, is that some kind of a good move or it's a blunder? Because the bishop is hanging. Yes, you can't take here because the rook is hanging. But Magnus first takes the rook, Rook takes, and now can he simply not take the bishop? He takes it. And Timur Gareyev resigns. What a resounding win for Magnus Carlsen. And just like that, he has dispatched his opponent's ambitious play out of the opening. You need to develop your pieces, you need to have your king safe, and Magnus Carlsen showed it how one can actually take advantage of this fact by playing logical moves in the center. A lot to learn from this game from the world's best player.